My name's Hilda, and I'm 60 years old. What I'm about to tell you will flip the way you see your own family. I always thought I knew mine. Every laugh, every secret, every habit. Turns out I didn't know a damn thing. 3 days ago, my own son Damien and his wife Melissa pushed my husband Henry and me off a 90-foot cliff. Yeah, you heard that right. My own blood. The boy I raised, the boy whose tears I wiped, tried to erase me from this world. I still hear Henry's voice from that moment. His breath was ragged, his face pale, and all he could whisper was, "Hilda, don't move." Play dead, so I did. Lying there broken, bleeding, tasting iron and dust, pretending to be lifeless. But that wasn't even the worst part. The real horror came when Henry told me the truth. The truth he'd buried for 25 years. The truth about Richard, our firstborn. Back when life still made sense, Henry and I had this simple little dream. We lived in a cozy suburban house with white curtains and a porch swing that creaked when the wind blew. Every morning, I'd make coffee, and the smell would drift through the kitchen while birds chirped outside. I'd kiss Henry goodbye before heading to the elementary school where I taught 3rd grade. Henry ran a small carpentry shop. The man could turn a plain old log into something museum-worthy. His hands were tough, but the way he handled wood, patient, careful, you'd think he was sculpting dreams. We had 2 boys. Richard, the older one, was sunshine wrapped in human form, always smiling, always helping, always the glue that held the family together. Damien came 5 years later, quieter, moodier. He'd rather stare at clouds than talk about his day. Still, I loved him fiercely. You love both your kids. It's what mothers do. Or at least that's what I believed back then. Sundays were sacred. After church, we'd gather around this big oak table Henry had built by hand. Richard would talk about studying engineering, how he wanted to build bridges someday. Damien just poked at his mashed potatoes, eyes wandering. Henry would crack jokes, I'd laugh till my stomach hurt, and for a while it felt like we were the perfect picture of an American family. Evenings were my favorite. Henry and I would walk the town trail, holding hands like we were still teenagers. We'd talk about the future, about seeing the ocean one day, watching our grandkids grow, maybe downsizing after retirement. Funny thing is, those walks ended up being training for the one that almost killed me. Family get-togethers were my happy place. My sisters, Harriet and Irene, would bring their kids. The house would turn into a circus of laughter and spilled lemonade. Henry was always the handyman, fixing someone's chair or tightening a cabinet screw while the rest of us swapped recipes. He was my rock. Even after 40 years of marriage, he'd still bring me wildflowers on his way home. We'd sit on the porch at night just watching stars blink awake. I thought that was love, and real simple love, but life loves to fool you, doesn't it? The sweeter the dream, the sharper the blade that cuts it. When Richard turned 20, something shifted. The air in the house got heavier. The brothers argued, and quietly at first, then more often. I'd hear their voices down the hallway, low but tense. When I'd ask, they'd stop mid-sentence and smile like nothing happened. Henry brushed it off, said, "Boys'll be boys." I wanted to believe him. God knows I did. Then came that October night, 25 years ago. Richard didn't come home. At first we thought maybe he was at a friend's place, but when midnight hit, my gut screamed that something was wrong. Henry grabbed a flashlight and went looking. Neighbors joined in. They searched the streets, the park, even the trail by the river. Just before sunrise, they found him, my beautiful boy, lying at the bottom of the gorge. The police said it was an accident. Probably slipped in the dark, they told me. And I believed them because the alternative was too painful to even imagine. The funeral was a blur. I wore the same black dress I'd worn to my mother's service, but this one felt heavier. Damien barely cried. Just stood there, stone-faced, while I sobbed till my throat burned. That calmness used to confuse me. Now it terrifies me. Henry held me the whole time, whispering, "We'll get through this." I thought he meant it. I didn't know his words carried a secret that would rot inside him for decades. After Richard's death, Damien changed overnight. He became this perfect son, attentive, helpful, sweet. He'd bring me tea, fix things around the house, and act like he wanted to make me smile again. I thought it was grief transforming him, turning pain into maturity. But it wasn't. It was performance. It was camouflage. Years rolled by. I retired from teaching and Henry's business kept him busy. Damien got married to Melissa, a sweet-talking girl from the next town over. She called me Mom, helped me in the kitchen, brought pies to Sunday dinners. For the first time in decades, I felt like maybe, just maybe, God was giving me a second chance at peace, until I learned the truth, until I realized the happiness I'd been clinging to was nothing more than a story they wrote for us. A story that ended with blood on the rocks and lies in our lungs. Because 3 days ago, my son tried to finish what he started 25 years ago. And as I lay there in the dirt, bones shattered and heartbreaking, I realized the truth Henry had been hiding all this time was about to destroy me. He turned to me, eyes full of pain, and said, "Hilda, there's something I never told you about Richard." And right there, between the pain and the silence, my world cracked open. Henry sat across from me at the kitchen table that night, his face pale under the low yellow light. His hands were shaking, and that's when I knew whatever he was about to say wasn't small. It was the kind of truth that breaks families apart. "Hilda," he whispered, barely looking at me. "There's something about Richard's death I never told you." I froze. My mind started spinning. What could he possibly mean? We'd buried our boy 25 years ago, mourned him, learned to live with that hole in our hearts. Why dig it up now? "Henry, what are you saying?" My voice cracked. He rubbed his face hard, like he could scrub away the guilt living under his skin. "That night," he began, "the night Richard died, Damien wasn't in his room. I saw him leave around 8. I followed him. I don't even know why. Call it a bad feeling. The words hit me like a punch. You followed him? Why didn't you ever tell me this?" "Because, Hilda, I saw them. I saw our boys arguing by the gorge. I felt my stomach drop." "Arguing about what?" "Money," he said flatly. "About the inheritance. Damien was angry that Richard would get more. But that wasn't all. Richard had found something about missing money." "Missing money?" My voice rose. Henry nodded. "Richard came to me 3 days before he died. He told me Damien had been taking cash from our savings. Small amounts at first, then bigger ones. He had proof. He was going to confront him that night. I couldn't breathe. The room spun around me. "You mean Damien?" Henry's eyes glistened. They yelled. I couldn't hear every word, but I saw the moment it happened. Richard pushed Damien's shoulder. Damien shoved him back, hard. Richard lost his footing near the edge. And then, Henry's voice broke. He fell. My heart shattered all over again. "So you knew," I whispered. "You knew our son killed his brother, and you said nothing." He looked at me with tears running down his cheeks. "He said it was an accident, Hilda. He swore he didn't mean it. He was crying, shaking, begging me not to tell anyone. I didn't want to believe he could kill his brother. You didn't want to believe it," I spat. "So you buried it." Henry slammed his fist on the table. What was I supposed to do? Turn in my own son? Lose both of them in one night? I stared at him, disgusted and heartbroken all at once. "You already lost them that night, Henry. You just refused to see it." He lowered his head. I thought time would fix it. That Damien had learned his lesson. He promised to repay what he stole. I wanted to believe him. God help me, I wanted to believe him. For a long time there was only silence between us, the kind that hums in your bones. I stared at the old photos on the wall, the smiling faces of the boys, and I felt sick. The perfect family I thought I had built was just a house of lies sitting on a grave. Over the next few days, everything felt different. The air in our house was heavy. When Damien and Melissa came to visit, I couldn't look at him the same way. Every time he smiled, I saw Richard's face falling into that gorge. Every time he hugged me, I felt the chill of betrayal through my bones. I started noticing little things. The way Damien's eyes flicked toward our safe when Henry opened it. The way Melissa asked casual questions about our insurance, our savings, our will. They were too smooth, too rehearsed. One evening, Melissa placed her hand on mine with that sugary tone of hers. "Mom, don't you think it's time to downsize? This big house must be hard to manage," I forced a smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart. I've been living here for 40 years. I think I can handle it," she laughed lightly. "Oh, of course. But we just want what's best for you." Her words made my skin crawl. "Best for me? No, sweetheart. Best for you." That night, when I mentioned it to Henry, he tried to calm me down. "They just care, Hilda. They don't mean any harm." "Don't be blind," I said sharply. "You saw what he's capable of. He killed his brother over money. Now he wants ours." Henry stayed quiet, but I saw it in his eyes. The same doubt creeping in, the same fear that was eating me alive. A week later, Damien brought up power of attorney. "It's just in case something happens," he said smoothly, sipping his coffee like we were talking about the weather. "If either of you gets sick, Melissa and I can handle things legally. You know, pay the bills, keep everything running." I looked him dead in the eye. "And what if we don't want that, Damien?" He chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "Come on, Mom, don't make this hard. It's just paperwork." Henry shifted uncomfortably beside me. "We'll think about it," he said. I glared at him after Damien left. "Think about it? Are you serious? Henry, he's manipulating us." He rubbed his temples. "I don't know anymore, Hilda. Maybe he's just trying to help." "No," I said coldly. "He's trying to finish what he started." That night, I called my sister Harriet. She's the kind of woman who can smell a lie a mile away. When I told her everything, she went quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Hilda, you need to listen to me. Damien's not helping you. He's hunting you. Be careful." Her words echoed in my mind long after the call ended. Hunting me. My own son, I barely slept. The shadows in our room looked like ghosts of all the lies we'd ignored for years. The next day, Damien showed up again, pretending everything was normal. He brought Melissa, both of them smiling like actors in some twisted play. As they talked about our finances and the mountain trip they wanted to take us on, I realized they weren't visiting parents. They were planning a job, and we were the mark. The next few days, Damien and Melissa acted like nothing had changed. They showed up with fake smiles, talking about family time and memories, but every word they spoke felt like poison wrapped in sugar. One afternoon, Damien leaned back in his chair, sipping his coffee like a man with no worries in the world. "Mom, Dad, you've been talking about traveling for years," he said. "So how about we finally do it? A weekend getaway. Just the four of us. Fresh air, good food, some hiking. It'll be fun." Henry smiled politely, but I could see the tension in his jaw. "Where were you thinking?" Damien grinned. "The mountains. You two always loved that old trail near the gorge, right? It's beautiful this time of year." And that's when my heart skipped. The gorge, the same cursed place where Richard died. Melissa jumped in, her voice syrupy sweet. "We'll take care of everything. You just relax. We'll make it a celebration of your anniversary." My fingers went cold. It was too neat, too perfect. They were setting the stage, just like before. That night, Henry and I sat on the couch in silence. The TV was on, but neither of us was watching. Finally, I spoke. "You realize what this is, right? That trip?" "It's not about celebrating us." Henry nodded slowly. "I know. It's about finishing what he started." We stayed up until dawn, whispering plans like two fugitives. Henry had decided to take his phone and record everything that happened. "If we die," he said, his voice trembling, "at least the truth won't die with us." It broke my heart to hear him say that. We were supposed to be planning our retirement, not our survival. Friday came too fast. Damien showed up bright and early, whistling as he loaded the car. Melissa followed, dressed like a catalog model in hiking gear, camera around her neck. "Morning, lovebirds." she chirped. Ready for your big adventure? I forced a smile. As ready as we'll ever be. Inside, I was shaking. Every nerve in my body screamed at me not to go. But Henry squeezed my hand and whispered, "We need proof, Hilda. We go, but we stay alert." So, we went. The drive to the mountains was 2 hours of fake laughter and small talk. Melissa played upbeat songs, singing along like this was the happiest day of her life. Damien cracked jokes, pretending to be the perfect son. But every time he looked at me in the rearview mirror, I saw it. That same cold emptiness I'd seen the night Richard died. When we finally reached the trail, the sun was high and the air smelled like pine and dirt. It would have been beautiful if it weren't for the dread curling inside my chest. Melissa pulled out her camera. "Smile, Mom," she said cheerfully, snapping pictures. "We're gonna remember this day forever." The irony nearly made me choke. Damien adjusted his backpack and gave Henry a quick pat on the shoulder. "Ready, old man?" Henry nodded, calm as ever. His phone was already recording from his pocket. We started walking. The trail wound through thick trees, sunlight flickering between branches. Birds sang somewhere in the distance, completely unaware that 2 people were walking to their deaths. At first, everything seemed fine. Too fine. Melissa pointed out flowers, took selfies, made small talk. Damien stayed behind us, just in case we slipped. "Yeah, right." I could feel his eyes on our backs the whole time. An hour in, the ground started getting steeper. My legs were burning and Henry was breathing heavier. That's when Melissa suddenly stopped and gasped. "Oh, wow. Look at that view." She pointed to a rocky cliff a few yards away. "We have to take pictures there." I looked at the spot, high, uneven, dangerous. My heart dropped. That was it. That was the place. "Maybe it's too risky," I said softly. Damien smiled that practiced perfect smile. "Come on, Mom, you can handle it. We'll help you up." It's safe. Safe. That word had lost all meaning. The climb was brutal. The rocks slipped under our shoes and every step felt like a gamble. But we made it to the top. The view was stunning. Endless trees, the river sparkling far below. If this were a normal day, I'd have cried from the beauty. But this wasn't beauty. It was a grave. Melissa positioned her camera. "Okay, you 2 stand right there." The light's perfect. Henry and I moved closer to the edge. Damien stepped behind us. I could feel his presence, quiet, calculating. "Smile," Melissa said. Click. Now one more. "Step back a little, Mom. The background will look amazing." Henry glanced at me. I saw fear in his eyes and resolve. "Sure," he said, stepping back. Melissa lifted the camera again, and that's when it happened. Damien lunged. He shoved hard, both hands. But Henry was ready. He twisted, grabbed Damien's wrist, and pulled him forward. "If we die," Henry growled, "you're coming with us." For one horrifying second, all 4 of us were tangled together at the edge, screaming, clawing, losing balance. Then the ground vanished. We fell. The wind roared in my ears. The world spun. I saw Melissa's terrified face, Damien's mouth open in shock, Henry reaching for me, and then nothing but the violent rush of air before we hit. The impact shattered everything. My bones, my breath, my world. I was sure that was the end. Until I heard Henry's broken whisper. "Hilda, don't move." Play dead, and so I did. When I hit the ground, everything went dark for a few seconds. The pain was so sharp it didn't even feel real at first. My ears rang, my ribs burned, and the taste of blood filled my mouth. I couldn't move and couldn't even breathe right. All I could hear was the wind whistling through the gorge and Henry's faint, trembling voice beside me. "Hilda, don't move. Play dead." That single whisper snapped me back. I forced myself to stay still, every muscle screaming, every breath shallow. My eyes were half open, but I didn't dare blink. The rocks were cold beneath me, and all I could think about was how Richard must have felt 25 years ago in this same place. A few feet away, I heard groaning. 2 voices, one male, one female. Damien and Melissa. Alive. Melissa's voice was weak, panicked. Damien, I can't move my leg. I think it's broken, he grunted. It's fine. We'll crawl till we find a signal. Then she said something that turned my blood to ice. What about the old people? Damien coughed and spat. They're dead. Both of them. I checked. No pulse. I wanted to scream, but I stayed silent. If they thought we were dead, maybe, just maybe, we'd survive. Melissa let out a shaky laugh. Well, at least it worked. Worked. The word stabbed deeper than any wound. My own son and his wife were lying 10 feet away, celebrating the murder of his parents. Yeah, Damien said, breathing hard, except for the part where we fell to. You're the idiot who grabbed them wrong. She snapped. If you hadn't— Shut up, Melissa, he barked. Just shut up. We need to get out of here before someone finds us. They started crawling, dragging themselves away from the cliff. I heard branches snap, rocks tumble, and then their voices fading into the distance. When the silence came, it was worse than the noise. Henry. I whispered as softly as I could. I'm here, he answered, his voice raw with pain. My leg's broken, ribs too. You? Arm, maybe shoulder, I whispered back. But I'm alive, he let out a weak laugh. Guess that's something. We lay there like that, broken and bleeding, waiting for something, anything. Time didn't exist. I don't know if it was minutes or hours. The light above started to dim, turning the gorge into a shadowed grave. I turned my head slightly and saw Henry's face. Pale, sweaty, eyes wide but focused. Hilda, he said after a while, there's something you should know. Everything I told you about Richard's death, that wasn't all. My heart pounded. What do you mean, not all? He coughed, wincing from the pain. That night, after it happened, after Damien said it was an accident, I helped him. I helped him move the body closer to the water. I stared at him, horrified. You what? I panicked, he cried softly. I thought I was protecting the family. I thought if people believed Richard slipped by the river, Damien would get a second chance. But I've been living with that sin ever since. Tears burned my eyes. You didn't protect the family, Henry. You protected a killer. He nodded weakly. I know, and now it's all come back to haunt us. We both went silent again. I could hear my heartbeat pounding against the dirt. The air smelled of dust and iron, the scent of death hanging over us. Then Henry whispered, They'll call for help. You'll see. Damien will make it sound like a tragedy. But my phone's still recording. It's proof. We'll get justice if anyone finds it. I nodded slowly. If anyone finds us alive, he smiled faintly. Then we just have to stay alive long enough. Hours passed. The sun disappeared and the cold crept in. The pain grew sharper with every breath. At one point, I heard voices echoing faintly from above, Damien's and Melissa's again, calling out for help. They'd found rescuers. I could even hear Damien's fake panic from far away. My parents, they fell. Please help them. The hypocrisy almost made me sick. Henry, I whispered. They're going to play the victims. He nodded weakly. Let them. When the rescuers come, we'll keep pretending until it's safe. We can't risk them finishing the job. So we waited, pretending to be corpses while the sound of rescue ropes and boots drew closer. A flashlight beam swept over my face. Someone shouted, We've got 2 more down here. Rough hands checked my pulse. She's got a faint heartbeat, one voice said. Man's alive too, critical but breathing. They worked fast. Straps, stretchers, oxygen masks. I stayed limp, heart racing. I wanted to grab them, to scream the truth, but Henry's voice echoed in my head again. Play dead. As they lifted me up, I heard Melissa sobbing above. Oh God, they're gone. My poor in-laws. If only she knew we were airlifted out in separate helicopters. I remember the blur of lights, the roar of the blades, the chaos of medics shouting orders. Somewhere nearby, I could hear Damien's voice again. Calm, calculated, pretending to mourn. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't over. They'd already fooled the police once 25 years ago. They could do it again. Unless Henry's recording survived. If we lived through the night, I'd make damn sure that recording saw the light of day, because the truth had slept for 25 years, but it wasn't staying buried anymore. When I woke up, everything smelled like antiseptic and metal. There was a steady beep somewhere near my head, and a weight on my chest that made breathing feel like a job. I tried to move my hand, but the pain snapped through me like fire. For a moment, I didn't know where I was, until the blurry ceiling lights came into focus. I was in a hospital. I wasn't dead. My mind raced back to the fall, the blood, Henry's whisper, play dead. I turned my head slightly and saw white curtains, IV tubes, and a nurse standing nearby checking monitors. Her name tag read INS. She noticed my eyes open and gasped softly. "Ma'am, you're awake." I wanted to speak, but my throat felt like sandpaper. She leaned closer. "Don't try to talk yet. You've been unconscious for nearly a day. A day." That meant Damien and Melissa had 24 hours to spin their story. God knows what lies they'd already told the police. My heart started pounding. "My husband," I croaked out. She smiled gently. "He's alive, ma'am. In the next room. He's badly injured but stable." Tears filled my eyes. Thank God. Before I could say anything else, the door opened, and there they were. Damien and Melissa. Melissa rushed forward with fake tears streaming down her face. "Oh my God, Mom! You're awake!" Her voice dripped with manufactured relief. She grabbed my hand like we were in some melodramatic movie. "We thought we lost you." Damien hovered near the door, eyes darting between me and the machines. His performance was more subtle. Quiet grief, practiced guilt. "Mom," he whispered, "you don't know how sorry I am. If only the nurse hadn't been in the room, I might have told him exactly what I thought. But I couldn't risk it. Not yet," I played along. I blinked slowly, weakly, pretending I didn't fully understand what was happening. Melissa turned to the nurse. "Is she going to be okay?" Inns nodded. "She's stable, but she needs rest. Please don't stress her." "Of course," Melissa said sweetly. "We'll just stay a few minutes." They sat near my bed, whispering like loving family members. Damien leaned closer, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "I hope you've learned your lesson, Mom," he murmured, smiling faintly. "You shouldn't have asked too many questions about money. Some truths are better left buried." Every word was poison. He thought I was too weak to fight back, but he was wrong, because I wasn't the only one who heard him. Nurse Inns froze mid-step. She'd caught every word. Her eyes widened in shock. Melissa must have noticed the tension because she tugged Damien's sleeve. "Honey, let's go. The doctors need space." They left, still playing the perfect grieving couple. When the door closed, Inns turned to me, her voice barely a whisper. "Ma'am, what did he mean by that?" "Who's Richard?" My throat tightened. She knew too much already, but I could tell she was on my side. I blinked once, then slowly moved my finger. Once, twice, 3 times. The signal I used when I was teaching deaf students years ago. Inns leaned closer. "You can hear me. Oh my God." "You're pretending." I blinked again. "Yes." She took a deep breath. "Ma'am, if those two hurt you, move your finger 3 times. I did." Her face went pale. "Okay, don't panic. I'm going to talk to the head doctor. We'll keep them away from you. I promise." For the first time in days, I felt something warm inside me. Hope. 15 minutes later, she came back. This time with an older man in a white coat and 2 police officers in plain clothes. The doctor spoke first, voice calm and low. "Mrs. Black, Nurse Inns told me everything. You're safe now. The officers are here to protect you." One of the detectives stepped forward. "Ma'am, I'm Detective Johnson. If you can talk, we'd like to hear what really happened on that mountain." I nodded, forcing my dry lips to part. My voice came out in a whisper, broken but steady. "My son and his wife pushed us." The room went silent. The detective's eyes hardened. Do you have proof? Henry, my husband, recorded everything. He turned to his partner immediately. Find that phone, now. Henry was still in the ICU, but conscious. When the detectives reached him, he gave them the phone without hesitation. It's all there, he rasped. Their voices, their plan, everything. Meanwhile, I could hear Damien and Melissa in the hallway outside, still acting like the perfect victims. Melissa sobbing, Damien telling nurses how he'd lost his parents in an accident. They didn't know the cops were listening to their every word. Within an hour, the detective came back with a grim smile. Mrs. Black, the recording confirms your story. We've got their confession about Richard's death, the inheritance, and the plan to kill you both. I let out a shaky breath. So, it's over? Almost, he said. We just need to arrest them. Through the small window of my room, I saw it happen. Officers surrounded Damien and Melissa near the waiting area. Damien Black. Melissa Black, you're under arrest for the murder of Richard Black and the attempted murder of Hilda and Henry Black. Melissa's shriek echoed down the hall. What? That's insane. We're the victims. But Damien's face told a different story. Shock, disbelief, then pure rage. That's impossible, he growled. We saw them die. His words sealed it. Another confession. Right there in public. They dragged them out in handcuffs while I lay there in bed, tears streaming down my face. It was over. After 25 years of lies, justice had finally found its way through the cracks. I closed my eyes and whispered, Rest now, Richard. They can't hurt anyone anymore. After the arrest, the hospital felt different. The air didn't taste like fear anymore. It tasted like silence, like the calm after a storm. But even in that calm, I couldn't rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Richard's face. I saw him falling. I saw Damien's cold stare. Detective Johnson came back the next morning. He stood by my bed, hands in his pockets, voice low. Mrs. Black, I thought you should know. We went through Damien's finances. I braced myself. He's bankrupt, the detective continued. Owes over $100,000. Not just to banks and to private lenders. Dangerous ones. I felt a strange mix of anger and pity. So that's why he wanted us gone, I whispered. We weren't just money. We were his way out, Johnson nodded. Without your inheritance, he would have been finished. He planned this trip because it was his last chance to save himself. I looked down at my bruised hands, the IV tubes running from my veins. He would have rather seen us dead than face his own mistakes, the detective sighed. People do terrible things when they're desperate, ma'am. But this was beyond desperate. It was evil. He hesitated for a second before continuing. We also found forged documents. Your son tried to fake your signatures to access your savings accounts. He was preparing everything for after your accident. I didn't say anything. There weren't any words left. Later that day, Henry was moved into my room. He looked tired, pale, but there was peace in his eyes that I hadn't seen in years. When the nurse left us alone, he reached for my hand. We made it, Hilda, he said softly. It's over, I shook my head. No, Henry, it'll never really be over. Our son killed our firstborn. Then he tried to kill us. That's not something that ends, it just changes shape. Henry's grip tightened. I know, but at least now the truth's out. We don't have to hide anymore. For a long moment, we just sat there listening to the hum of the machines. The world outside kept spinning, people laughing, traffic passing, life continuing. But for us, time had stopped somewhere between forgiveness and fury. The next morning, Detective Johnson returned with more news. They confessed, he said bluntly. Not at first. But after a few hours, they turned on each other. He pulled out a small recorder and played a snippet. Melissa's voice came first, trembling but vicious. It was all his idea. I didn't want to hurt them. Then Damien shouting over her. You're lying! You were the one who said we should push them. You picked the cliff. Their words tore at me, but they also set me free. The truth was finally out. Every dark, filthy corner of it. What'll happen to them? I asked quietly. They'll both face first-degree murder for Richard and attempted murder for you and your husband. It's a life sentence. Henry closed his eyes and exhaled. Good. But even as relief washed over me, something else crawled in. Guilt. Because no matter what they'd done, Damien was still my son. The boy I once held when he had nightmares. The boy who'd scraped his knee and cried for me. That boy had become a monster, and I had to live knowing I'd brought him into this world. A few days later, my sister Harriet came to visit. She hugged me like she never wanted to let go. Oh, Hilda, she whispered. I knew something was wrong with Damien all along, but I never imagined this. None of us did, I said softly. We were too busy pretending everything was fine, she nodded. The world always sees the smiles, not the cracks. We sat in silence for a while before she said, The police told me about the kids. Damien's children. My heart sank. Where are they? With social services for now. But the detective said you and Henry can apply for custody once you're recovered. The thought hit me like lightning. My grandchildren. Innocent, confused, and now orphans in every sense. They don't deserve to pay for their parents' sins, I said. Harriet smiled sadly. Then maybe raising them can be your healing, Hilda. Your way of fixing what's broken. Maybe she was right. Maybe love, real love, could rebuild what greed had destroyed. When Henry and I were finally discharged, we went home. The house felt like a ghost. Quiet, dusty, heavy with memories. Damien's laughter still echoed in the walls. Richard's smile lived in every corner. I stood in the doorway of the old workshop, the smell of wood still lingering. He used to carve dreams in here, I whispered. Henry put his arm around me. And he also carved lies. But we can start fresh, Hilda, we have to, I nodded. For the kids. For Richard. That night we lit a candle by Richard's photo. I looked at his face, so bright, so full of promise, and whispered, You can rest now, my love. The truth is free. But when I looked at Damien's old photo on the shelf, my chest tightened. And you, I murmured. I hope someday you understand what you destroyed. The trial date was set. Reporters called it the family cliff case. The whole country wanted to know how a son could do such a thing. But behind every headline, behind every whispered conversation, there was just me. A mother who'd lost everything twice. Justice had come. But peace? That was something else entirely. 6 months later, the courtroom smelled of old wood and cold air. Cameras clicked outside, reporters whispered, and the words family cliff case flashed across every news screen in town. But for me, it wasn't a headline. It was my life, broken open for the world to see. Henry and I sat side by side in the front row, both of us still healing. His leg was in a brace, my arm still stiff from the fracture. We weren't there for revenge. We were there for truth. When they brought Damien in, the world stopped moving for a second. My son, my baby boy, walked in handcuffed, wearing an orange jumpsuit that looked so wrong on him it almost made me sick. His hair was shorter, his face harder, colder. But when our eyes met, I didn't see the boy I raised. I saw the man who'd killed his brother and tried to kill us. Melissa followed behind him. She looked broken, hair messy, eyes red. The same sweetness she once used to fool us now completely gone. But even then, I could see her calculating mind turning, figuring out how to save herself. They didn't look at each other. Whatever love or loyalty they had was gone. Survival had taken its place. When the prosecutor stood up, the entire courtroom went quiet. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, this case is about greed, betrayal, and the darkest kind of evil. The kind that hides behind a family smile. Then he played the recording from Henry's phone. The sound of the mountain wind filled the room, followed by Melissa's voice. Smile. This is going to be your last photo. Gasps echoed around the courtroom. Reporters scribbled. The judge's expression hardened. Then Damien's voice came on, low but clear. If we die, you're coming with us. And finally, the horrible sound of the fall. By the time it ended, the courtroom was silent again, except for Melissa's quiet sobs. The defense tried their tricks. They claimed it was a crime of passion, an accident that spiraled out of control. Their lawyer said Damien had been under financial pressure and that Melissa was manipulated, but the evidence was too strong. The recording, the forged papers, the debt records, even the forged signatures, it all painted one story: premeditated murder. When it was my turn to testify, I stood slowly, gripping the rail to steady myself. The judge asked if I was ready, and I nodded. My heart pounded like a drum. I looked straight at Damien. "You took Richard from me," I said, my voice trembling but clear. "You took the joy out of this family. You took your father's peace. And then, when you thought we couldn't stop you, you tried to take our lives too." Damien didn't flinch. He just stared, emotionless. "You weren't born a monster," I continued. "You became one. The day you decided money mattered more than blood." Then I looked at Melissa. "And you could have stopped him. But instead, you chose to hold the camera." Her eyes filled with tears, but I knew they weren't for me. They were for herself, for the life she'd lost. When I finished, the judge thanked me for my testimony. As I stepped down, Henry reached for my hand. "You did good, Hilda," he whispered, but it didn't feel good. It felt like my heart had been cut open all over again. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Each hour felt like a lifetime. We waited in a small room with Detective Johnson and our lawyer, Albert. When the verdict finally came, the bailiff's voice echoed through the hall. "All rise." The jury filed in, their faces grave. The foreman stood up, holding the paper. "On the charge of first-degree murder of Richard Black, we find the defendant, Damien Black, guilty." A gasp broke through the crowd. My knees almost gave out, but Henry caught me. "On the charge of attempted murder of Hilda and Henry Black, guilty." Tears blurred my vision. "And on the same charges for Melissa Black, guilty." Melissa let out a scream that chilled the room. Damien just lowered his head, jaw tight. The judge sentenced them both to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The gavel hit. The sound felt final, like the closing of a coffin. It was justice. But it didn't feel like victory. Outside, the reporters swarmed us, shoving microphones in our faces. "Mrs. Black, how do you feel? Do you forgive your son? What will you do now?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. What does forgiveness even mean when it's your own blood that tried to kill you? Henry and I just walked past them, hand in hand, like two survivors leaving a battlefield that used to be home. That night, we sat in our living room, the same one where we'd once celebrated birthdays, Christmases, and Sunday dinners. The silence felt endless. Henry finally spoke. "We did it, Hilda. We told the truth." "Yes," I said softly. "But at what cost?" He nodded slowly. "Maybe truth doesn't come for free. Maybe it always demands something in return." I looked around the room, at Richard's photo, at the fading wildflowers Henry once brought me, at the shadows dancing on the walls, and realized he was right. Truth had cost us our family, our peace, our hearts. But it also gave us something back: freedom from lies. And sometimes that's enough. It had been almost a year since the trial ended. The newspapers stopped calling, the reporters stopped knocking, and life went quiet again. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you remember every sound from the past, every scream, every cry, every word that still haunts you. Henry and I spent most mornings on the porch, sipping coffee, staring at the same street we'd lived on for 40 years. Sometimes I caught him lost in thought, looking out at nothing. Other times I'd find myself staring at Richard's photo, still unable to believe that 25 years of lies had been buried under one fall. One evening, the phone rang. It was Detective Johnson. "Mrs. Black," he said warmly, "I thought you should know that the custody papers are ready." "Social Services has approved your request," I froze. "You mean—" "Yes," he said. You and your husband are now the legal guardians of your grandchildren." I couldn't speak for a second. My throat tightened, and tears blurred my vision. "Thank you, Detective." "Thank you," he smiled through the phone. "They deserve a chance at a normal life, ma'am. And you're the best chance they've got." The next morning, we drove to the Children's Center. I'll never forget that moment. The door opened, and there they were, two small faces, confused but hopeful. Emma, just 8 years old, and her little brother Noah, barely 6. Both had Damien's eyes, but Richard's warmth. Emma looked at me shyly. "Are you really my grandma?" I knelt down, ignoring the ache in my knees, and pulled her close. "Yes, sweetheart. And I'm never letting you go." When I hugged them both, I felt something inside me break. Not from pain this time, but from relief. A second chance. A new heartbeat for a broken home. The first few weeks were hard. The kids had nightmares. Emma would wake up crying, asking why her parents couldn't come home. Noah barely spoke at all. Henry tried to be strong, telling them stories about the good old days when he and their dad were young. Leaving out the darkness, one night, after I tucked them in, Emma asked softly, "Grandma, why does everyone say Daddy's gone forever?" The question hit harder than any wound I'd ever had. I stroked her hair gently. "Sweetheart, your daddy made some very bad choices. But we're going to make sure you never have to be scared again." She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "So, you're not mad at him?" I swallowed hard. "I'm sad, not mad. Sometimes people we love do things that break our hearts. But love doesn't disappear. It just changes." She nodded slowly, the kind of understanding only children can have. "I still love him," she whispered. "I know," I said softly. "And that's okay. Henry spent more time with them than I expected." Even with his injuries, he'd take Noah to the workshop, letting him sand wood while he built small birdhouses. "The world still needs things that are made with love," he said one afternoon, smiling as Noah painted a crooked heart on the side of a wooden box. Watching them together gave me something I hadn't felt in years: peace. But peace has a funny way of hiding cracks beneath it. One day, I was cleaning the attic when I found an old box, the one Damien had kept his childhood things in. I sat there for hours, surrounded by the ghosts of the past. Drawings, report cards, little wooden toys Henry had carved for him. At the bottom of the box was something that froze me. An old photo of Damien and Richard, arms around each other, smiling. On the back, written in Damien's handwriting, were the words, "Brothers forever." For the first time in years, I cried for both of them, the son I'd lost, and the son I'd never truly had. Life slowly found its rhythm again. Emma started school, Noah began talking more, and laughter returned to our house, the kind that sounded real. Sometimes, I'd catch Henry watching the kids play and whisper, "Maybe this is how God gives second chances, through the innocent." I'd nod, holding his hand. Maybe we were meant to keep them safe this time. Every night I'd tell Emma and Noah stories. About Richard, their uncle who used to fix bikes and bake cookies. About their dad, back when he was just a boy chasing fireflies, before greed turned his heart to stone. I never lied to them, but I didn't fill their world with hate either. They deserved to know love first, truth later. A year after the trial, we got a letter from the prison. It was from Damien. I stared at it for days before opening it. The handwriting was shaky, uneven. "Mom, Dad, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I see Richard every night when I close my eyes. I hear him calling my name. I know what I did, and I know I can never undo it. But I want you to know, I'm sorry. Not because I got caught. Because I finally understand what I destroyed." The letter ended with one final line. "If my kids ever ask about me, tell them I was weak. But tell them they can still be strong." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer. Not because I forgave him, but because someday Emma and Noah might need to read it. They deserve to decide for themselves who their father really was. That night I stood on the porch, the moonlight spilling across the yard. Henry joined me, his hand finding mine. "We made it, Hilda," he said quietly. "We finally made it," I nodded, tears rolling down my cheeks. "Yeah, but not the way I imagined," he smiled faintly. "Sometimes the road to peace is built from broken pieces, and for once I believed him." Life had started to look almost normal again. Emma and Noah brought laughter back into the house, and for the first time in years, the air didn't feel heavy. There were breakfast giggles, tiny socks in the laundry, and drawings on the fridge. For a while, I almost believed the darkness was behind us. But life has a cruel way of reminding you that peace doesn't erase the past. It only hides it. It started one rainy afternoon when I went to Henry's workshop. He'd been quiet all morning, sitting by his workbench, staring at a pile of papers instead of wood. "What's wrong?" I asked, wiping my hands on a towel. He hesitated before sliding a small yellowed envelope across the table. "I found this in the drawer of my old toolbox. It's addressed to me, but it's from Richard." I froze. "Richard?" He nodded. "It's dated 2 days before he died." My heart started pounding. My hands trembled as I unfolded the letter. The handwriting was Richard's, neat, clean, careful. "Dad, I know something's wrong with Damien. He's been sneaking around, taking money, lying about work. I found the withdrawal slips. I'm going to confront him. But I need you to promise me something. If anything happens to me, don't just believe it was an accident. Please protect Mom. I think he's desperate, and desperation makes people dangerous." I stopped reading. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. "He knew," I whispered. "Richard knew this would happen." Henry leaned back, guilt flooding his eyes. "He warned me, Hilda. He tried to tell me, and I didn't listen." I folded the letter gently and held it against my chest. He wasn't just our son. He was the only one who saw the truth. That night, I couldn't sleep. The rain kept hitting the windows, and every drop sounded like a heartbeat, like the ticking of time reminding me of everything I'd missed. Around midnight, I went to check on Emma and Noah. They were fast asleep, curled up together under a blanket. I sat beside their bed, brushing Noah's hair from his forehead. He stirred slightly. "Grandma?" he mumbled, half asleep. "Daddy said he's sorry." I froze. "What did you say, honey?" He turned his face into the pillow. "In my dream, Daddy said he's sorry. He said he made a big mistake." Tears burned my eyes. Maybe it was just a dream, or maybe some part of Damien's guilt had found its way to his children. I whispered softly, "He should be sorry, sweetheart. But you never have to carry that burden. That's not yours to bear." The next morning, Henry called Detective Johnson over. He handed him Richard's letter. The detective read it carefully, his brow furrowing deeper with every line. "This letter confirms Richard's suspicions," Johnson said. "It also proves he was planning to expose Damien. That means your son didn't just act out of anger. It was premeditated, even back then." Henry's face fell. "We already got justice, Detective. Why does it still hurt like we lost him yesterday?" Johnson sighed. "Because justice doesn't heal, Mr. Black. It just closes the file. It's up to you to close the wound." He placed a hand on Henry's shoulder before leaving. "Keep that letter safe. One day your grandchildren might need to understand who their uncle really was and why their father lost his way." Weeks passed, but something in Henry began to change. He grew quieter, slower. Sometimes I'd catch him standing by the porch, staring into the distance where the horizon met the sky. One evening, he said softly, "I can't stop thinking about that night. Hilda, about the things I didn't do." I reached for his hand. "You did what you thought was right," he shook his head. "No, I did what was easy. And because of that, Richard died, and Damien became what he did." His words cut deep because part of me felt the same. We both had spent years believing silence kept the family safe, but silence had been the poison all along. A few days later, I decided to visit the church alone. I hadn't prayed there since Richard's funeral. The candles flickered as I sat in the front pew, clutching that letter in my hands. "God," I whispered, "I've lost one son to death and the other to darkness. I don't know what lesson you're trying to teach me, but please, Let me keep what's left. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I stared at the flickering light. And for the first time, I didn't pray for justice. I prayed for peace. For myself, for Henry, and even for Damien's soul, wherever it wandered behind bars. When I got home, Henry was waiting on the porch with 2 cups of tea. "How's the big guy upstairs?" he asked with a tired smile. "Still quiet," I said softly, sitting beside him. "But maybe he's listening." We watched the sunset together. The same sky that once witnessed tragedy now glowing gold and orange. And for the first time in years, I felt the ache inside me start to soften. That night, as I tucked the kids into bed, Emma asked me, "Grandma, why do people write letters if they know the person might never read them?" I smiled faintly. "Because sometimes writing is the only way to say goodbye." She thought about it for a second, then said, "Then maybe Daddy should write one too." I kissed her forehead. Maybe he already did. Winter had come early that year. The cold wrapped around the house like a quiet ghost, creeping into every corner no matter how high we turned up the heat. Henry had been coughing for days, but he kept saying it was just a cold. I knew better. Something in his eyes had changed. Softer, slower, like he was carrying a secret he couldn't keep much longer. One night, after putting the kids to bed, I found him sitting in the workshop, staring at the half-finished birdhouse he and Noah had started together. The lamp cast a warm circle of light around him, but the rest of the room was dark. "You should be resting," I said, walking in. He smiled faintly. "I can rest later. Just needed to finish this for Noah." I sat across from him, watching his trembling hands sand the edges. "You don't have to finish it tonight," I whispered. He looked up at me, eyes glistening. "Hilda, there's something I need to say before it's too late." "Don't start talking like that," I said quickly, my throat tightening. "You're not—" He cut me off gently. "Please, just let me talk." I stayed silent. He took a deep breath. "All these years I thought keeping secrets would protect you. I thought silence was mercy. But I was wrong. Every lie I kept buried only grew heavier until it crushed us." He paused, his voice trembling. "If I had told the truth about Damien back then, maybe Richard would still be alive. Maybe Damien wouldn't have become what he did." I felt tears rising, but I didn't stop him. "I can't fix the past," he continued softly. "But I want you to know, you were right to fight for the truth, even when I couldn't. You were the brave one, Hilda. You always were." I reached for his hand. "Henry, don't talk like it's goodbye." He smiled, that same gentle smile I'd fallen in love with 40 years ago. "Maybe it's not goodbye. Maybe it's just, see you soon." He passed away 3 nights later, quietly in his sleep. I woke up before dawn and felt the emptiness beside me before I even opened my eyes. The silence was too complete. When I touched his hand, it was cold, peaceful but gone. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there holding his hand, whispering, "You kept your promise, Henry. You protected me till the end." When the sun rose, its light fell across his workbench. The little birdhouse was finished, painted sky blue with Noah's messy red heart on the side. A tiny note sat beside it in Henry's handwriting. "For our grandchildren, may they always build homes of love, not lies." I pressed the paper to my chest and finally let the tears come. The funeral was small, just family, neighbors, and Harriet standing beside me. Emma clutched my hand the entire time, while Noah placed the birdhouse beside his grandpa's grave. After everyone left, I stayed behind. "You can rest now, Henry," I whispered. "The truth is finally out. Richard's at peace. Damien's paying for what he did. And I'll take care of the kids, both of ours." The wind rustled through the trees, and for a second I could have sworn I heard his voice. "You already are, Hilda." Days turned into weeks. Grief became another quiet guest in the house. I still cooked breakfast every morning, still helped Emma with her homework, still listened to Noah's stories about school. But every evening, when the sun dipped behind the trees, I'd sit on the porch and talk to Henry. One evening, I brought out the letter Richard had written and placed it beside Henry's photo. "He tried to warn us," I whispered. "And you tried to protect us. I just hope he forgives us both." Emma walked out holding her sketchbook. "Grandma, can I show you something?" She opened the page. It was a drawing, our family. Me, Henry, Emma, and Noah holding hands under a big oak tree. And above us, 2 angels with glowing halos, one labeled Richard and one Grandpa. My heart ached, but it was the kind of ache that comes with healing. "It's beautiful," I said, kissing her forehead. "Never stop drawing what you feel?" She smiled. "I just want to make them proud," I nodded. "You already do, sweetheart." That night, I sat by the window, the moonlight spilling across the living room. For the first time in what felt like forever, the house didn't feel haunted by pain. It felt full again. I thought of everything we'd been through, the lies, the fall, the survival, the truth, and finally, the peace. And for the first time, I understood something Henry had once said, that truth doesn't always heal you, but it frees you. Freedom doesn't erase the scars, but it lets you breathe again. Spring came early that year. The cold slowly melted away, and sunlight crept through the curtains like hope returning after a long war. It had been 3 months since Henry's passing, and the ache of his absence still lived in every corner of the house. Yet somehow the children's laughter kept the air warm. Every morning, Noah would run to the porch yelling, "Grandpa's birds came back!" He'd point to the little blue birdhouse Henry had made, now home to 2 tiny robins. I smiled every time I saw them flutter in and out. "See, sweetheart," I told him, "your grandpa's love is still around. It just found new wings." Emma had grown quieter lately. She spent long hours drawing in her room, sketching pictures of the mountains, trees, and even faces she'd never seen. One evening, she brought her sketchbook to me. "Grandma," she said softly, "I made a story." She opened the page. It showed a woman, old but strong, standing between 2 cliffs. Behind her, shadows of 2 men were fading into light. "What's her story?" I asked. Emma looked down. "She lost everyone she loved, but she kept their hearts safe. Because when she stopped being scared, she became stronger than all the bad things." Her words hit me like a quiet truth. I cupped her face gently. "You're braver than you know, Emma." She smiled faintly. "You too, Grandma." A few weeks later, a letter arrived in the mail. I recognized the handwriting immediately, Damien's. I hesitated before opening it. His letters always came once a month, and though I had never replied, I read every one. Maybe it was a mother's curse, always hoping for a sign of redemption. "Mom, I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know that prison changes you. It strips away the lies, the pride, everything. I've been attending chapel every day. Sometimes I think I see Richard there, smiling like he used to. If I could trade places with him, I would. I don't deserve to breathe the same air as you or Dad, but please, tell Emma and Noah that their father loved them, even when he didn't know how to show it." For the first time, his words didn't feel manipulative. They felt human, raw, broken. I folded the letter and placed it inside the same box as Richard's warning note. 2 brothers, 2 letters, 2 truths that would one day belong to Emma and Noah. Life slowly found rhythm again. I spent my days tending the garden Henry had started years ago. Every seed I planted felt like a promise that something beautiful could still grow from pain. One afternoon, I found Emma standing near the fence, staring at the horizon. "What are you thinking about?" I asked. She turned to me, her expression thoughtful. "When I grow up, I want to help people who lost their families too. Maybe write stories about them, maybe about you," I smiled, though my eyes stung. "Then make sure you tell it right, sweetheart, not just the pain, but the courage too." She grinned. "I will. I'll call it The Cliff of Secrets." The name made me shiver and smile at the same time. That's a good name, because every secret we kept almost killed us, and every truth we spoke brought us back to life. That night, I took out an old notebook. The same one I used to keep lesson plans in back when I was a school teacher. On the first page, I wrote, "For Emma and Noah, so you'll never forget that truth. Even when it hurts, we'll always set you free." I began writing everything, not just what happened on the cliff, but the years before. The love, the laughter, the Sunday dinners, the quiet evenings on the porch, the sound of Henry's laughter, and Richard's dreams. As I wrote, I realized something. This wasn't just my story anymore. It belonged to every mother who ever lost a child, every wife who stood beside a broken man, every soul who chose truth over comfort. And for the first time, the story didn't hurt to tell. It healed me. Weeks later, the robins from the birdhouse finally flew away, leaving behind 2 tiny eggshells. Noah found them and brought them to me with a grin. "They left their home, Grandma. But they'll come back, right?" I smiled, holding the delicate shells in my hand. "They don't need to come back, sweetheart. They're out there building their own homes now, just like you will one day." He nodded seriously, then said, "But I'll still visit you." Every day, I laughed softly. That's all I'll ever need. That evening, I sat by the window as the sunset painted the sky orange and gold. The light touched the photo of our family, Richard smiling, Henry holding my hand, Damien in the corner, his smile hiding 1,000 storms. I whispered to the air, "We made it, didn't we?" Through death, lies, and pain, we still made it. For the first time, the silence in the house didn't hurt. It felt peaceful, like the world had finally stopped bleeding. 10 years later, the house no longer felt like a place of grief. It felt alive again. The walls had seen laughter return, and the garden bloomed brighter than ever. The birdhouse still hung on the porch, a little faded now, but it stood like a symbol of everything we survived. Emma had turned 18 that summer. Noah was 16 and taller than me now, with the same gentle heart Richard once had. Watching them grow was like watching life rewrite itself. Correcting the mistakes of the past one quiet day at a time, but even peace carries echoes. One afternoon, as we were cleaning the attic, Emma found the old box, the one with the letters. "Grandma," she said softly, holding the yellowed envelope with my name on it. "What's this?" I hesitated. I'd been waiting for this moment for years, the moment when truth would pass to the next generation. "Those," I said, "are pieces of our family's story. But they come with pain, not just memories." Emma looked at me with calm eyes. "I'm ready to know." We sat together in the living room. The air was heavy, but not with fear, with truth waiting to be spoken. I handed her Richard's letter first. She read it in silence, her eyes widening slightly with every line. When she finished, she whispered, "He knew Dad would hurt him." I nodded slowly. "Yes, but he never stopped loving him. None of us did." Then I gave her Damien's prison letter. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. She read every word, her expression shifting between pain and confusion. When she finished, she looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. "He really was sorry, wasn't he?" I took her hand. "He was many things, lost, broken, angry. But yes, I believe in the end he was sorry." Noah had been listening quietly from the doorway. "Grandma," he said, stepping closer, "do you hate Dad?" The question hit me deep. I shook my head slowly. "No, sweetheart. I don't hate him. Hating him would mean he still controls a part of my heart. I forgave him, not for him, but for all of us. Because forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing peace over poison." That night, Emma came to me with her journal. "Grandma, I want to write it all down," she said. "The truth? About Richard, about Dad, about you and Grandpa? People need to know what silence can do to a family." I smiled, though my heart ached with pride. "Then write it, my love. But promise me one thing. End it with hope, not hate." She nodded. "I will." Over the next few months, Emma poured everything into her writing. I'd see her by the window typing late into the night, sometimes crying, sometimes smiling. Noah would sit beside her, helping her remember details from my stories. When she finally finished, She placed the printed pages in my hands. The title read, "The Cliff of Secrets, A Family's Fall and Rise." I traced the words with my fingers, feeling Henry's spirit, Richard's love, and even Damien's remorse woven into every line. "You've done what I couldn't," I said softly. "You turned pain into purpose," she smiled through tears. "You gave me the strength to." Months later, her story was published online. It spread quickly. People from around the world wrote to her, sharing how the story helped them face their own buried truths. One message stood out. It was from the prison chaplain where Damien was still serving time. "Dear Emma, your father read your story today. He wept for hours. He asked me to tell you that it's the first time in years he's felt peace." Emma read the message aloud, her voice trembling. I saw something shift inside her. A quiet understanding that forgiveness doesn't erase pain, but it heals the soul piece by piece. That evening, we visited the graves together, Henry's and Richard's side by side, under the old oak tree. Emma placed her book between the two headstones. "This is for both of you," she whispered. "Your truth became my story." The wind rustled through the leaves, and for a moment it felt like the whole world was breathing with us. Noah stood beside me, his arm around my shoulder. "Grandma, do you think they're proud?" I smiled through tears. "Oh, sweetheart. They're not just proud. They're free." As the sun set behind the hills, I looked at the two young faces beside me, the faces of the future, born from tragedy but shaped by truth. The past was no longer a curse. It was a lesson, one carved deep into our family's history but carried forward with love. And for the first time in my long, painful, beautiful life, I felt peace. Pure, unbroken peace. It had been 20 years since that terrible day on the mountain. Time, as they say, does not heal everything, but it teaches you how to live with the scars. The house by the cliff still stood. The paint had faded, the roof creaked in the wind, and the old oak tree had grown so wide its branches touched the windows. But to me it was still home, the place where love had bloomed, where tragedy struck, and where truth finally found its voice. Emma had become a writer, not just of stories, but of healing. Her book, The Cliff of Secrets, had touched countless hearts. People came from far away just to sit in our garden, to feel what they called the peace that lives here. Noah, my sweet boy, had followed in Henry's footsteps. He ran a carpentry shop in town, building furniture that carried his grandfather's soul, strong, simple, and honest. Every chair, every table, every frame held a message, that even broken things can be remade into something beautiful. I had grown older, my hair now silver and my hands lined with time. But my spirit felt lighter than ever. Each morning I sat on the porch, watching the robins return to that same blue birdhouse Henry built all those years ago. They came back every spring, no matter how harsh the winter. That, I thought, is what family really is. Not perfection, not silence, but the choice to keep returning, to rebuild, even when everything has fallen apart. One evening, as the sky turned crimson, Emma arrived with Noah and their own children, my great-grandchildren. They ran across the yard, laughing, chasing fireflies, the same way Richard and Damien once did. Emma placed a small gift in my hands, a brand new copy of her book. The cover had changed. It now read, "Dedicated to my grandmother, Hilda, the woman who taught me that truth may break hearts, but it also saves souls." I couldn't speak. My voice was lost somewhere between pride and tears. All I could do was pull her into my arms and whisper, "You gave meaning to everything we went through." She smiled. "You gave me the story, Grandma. I just gave it words." That night, after everyone went to bed, I walked to the cliff. The same cliff where my life had nearly ended, now silent, bathed in moonlight. The air smelled of pine and salt, and the wind whispered softly, carrying the voices of the past. I closed my eyes and spoke into the darkness. "Henry, we did it. Richard, your truth wasn't lost. And Damien, I hope you finally found peace. A single tear rolled down my cheek, but this time it wasn't from pain. It was from release. The ghosts of the past no longer haunted me. They guided me. When I turned to go back, I saw Emma standing by the path, smiling gently. "I knew I'd find you here," she said. I smiled back. "This place took everything from me once. Now it gives it all back." We stood together, watching the moonlight dance on the valley below. The same valley that once held death, now shimmering with life. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The air was still. The house was quiet. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready. Truly ready. I walked outside to the porch one last time, sat in my favorite chair, and watched the sun rise over the mountains. The first light touched the birdhouse, the garden, the family photos, every piece of our story, and as the warmth reached my face, I whispered softly, "Everything's where it's meant to be." Then, with a peaceful smile, I closed my eyes. Weeks later, Emma wrote a final chapter to her mother's story, an ending I could never have written myself. My grandmother passed away the way she lived, quietly, courageously, and surrounded by truth. She left behind a home filled with love, a garden that never stopped blooming, and a legacy that reminds us all that family is not about blood. It's about who stays when the storm comes. And at the end of the book, she added one final line. "The truth may hurt, but silence kills. Speak, even when your voice trembles."